Hey everyone, welcome to a new video. Today, although the title seems extremely simple, I'm gonna really break things down for Etsy. I've been getting a lot of love from you guys who have seen some of my past Etsy videos, especially the past two videos, and you guys love it. You say, or you've been telling me, that I have a completely different take than what a lot of people are talking about with Etsy. A lot of the Etsy content, really a lot of the content on YouTube, is just regurgitations, refreshes of the exact same content. You see an influencer on YouTube create a Printful account, they upload a design to Etsy, and then 300 other YouTubers do the exact same thing, promoting the same softwares, promoting the same products, telling you to do the same things, and acting like that's going to really retrieve some sort of benefit or income for you guys. And my plan through Etsy has been different, like I said, since the beginning of time for me when I started Etsy. And I had no interest to copy other people. You guys know this. With everything that I do, I always try to figure out a system that works for me. And I understand completely that in this world, there are systems of organization as to how people make money. And YouTube is one of those things where either you come to YouTube to learn or you come to make money off of YouTube. And I want to try as best as I can to make this YouTube channel something different. I don't want it to be a place where it's just a place for me to make income and AdSense money and sell courses. I want it to be a place where people can walk away from this YouTube channel months down the line, years down the line, time down the line, where they say, man, that YouTube channel truly taught me something. And my goal, guys, is to simplify the information that I've learned and bring it down to you guys and truly be a benefit. Like I said, I'm not just trying to rinse and repeat content that other people create. I'm not trying to copy off of other people. I have completely different strategies as to how I make money on Etsy and really every other platform. I look at things completely different, and I'm going to be sharing that here today. There are other people who have different strategies. That's fine. I'm just simply sharing my strategies and the information that I've learned in the time that I've been working on Etsy. So let's go ahead and get started. If you can understand this lesson, right, I guarantee you that making money on Etsy will be much more simple. And you can always come back to this video almost as your North Star, your alignment video, to align yourself in a pathway to success with Etsy. All right, so let's go ahead and get into it. With Etsy, I wanted to break things down into a competition and demand spectrum, okay? The reason why I'm doing this is because if you can figure this out, right, if you can predict a product in terms of the competition and demand, and there's a lot of ways to do that. There's different software tools, there's different things that you can use that will help you predict a little bit more and accurately. You can achieve massive success. And to everybody, success is different, of course. Some guy expects 50 grand a month to be massive success, and then some people just want to make their first $10,000 a year might be massive success for somebody else. So everybody's different, and everybody can apply this at their own level. And frankly, everybody has different amounts of time, budgets, creativity, and so on. So if you guys can, like I said, walk away with the information I'm about to show you, it's going to lead you down a good path. So let me explain this, right? And I'll go ahead and just scroll down here. When we have this matrix or this spectrum, every single product is not set in stone as to how competitive or how much demand there is for it. And in the world of economics, there is the competition and the demand side of things. And the reason why I say that is this is not specifically just supply and demand. This is more competition and demand. Supply and demand plays its own different spectrum, or its own different, I guess you could say, has its own different role in the game, but competition and demand is something I want you to understand first. So let's go ahead and create this spectrum, right? Every time you think of creating a product, before you go out there and create it, before you do the niche research, before you do any of that, I want you to understand that a product is going to fit somewhere on this chart. Let's go ahead and break it down. Here we have competition. the section here is essentially competition. So everything above this line, closer to the word competition, is going to be high competition by default, okay? So if I was to take a line, right, let's just go ahead and take a line here, and let's go ahead and separate things, and I'm going to make this a red line, or let's just use an orange line for Etsy, right? And let me go ahead and try to, let me push this away here so we can get a little bit more space. If I was to take this orange line, everything from here upward is high competition, okay? In the world of Etsy, okay? And really, I'm just gonna keep it to Etsy for now for this video. In the world of Etsy, the reality is that higher competition is essentially dirtier waters, put it that way. You do not want to be in dirty waters. You want to minimize the amount of time that you can be in dirty waters. And I'll tell you why. High competition, what it leads to is slower sales. Now, some of you might say, they come up with all kinds of things that they could say. They say, well, my design is in a high competition, or my shirt or my product or whatever the case may be gets me X amount of sales, high competition, etc. Totally understand. But we're talking about a product that is just created from scratch. From this point forward, if you want to make money, let's go ahead and categorize these sections, right? These spectrums. The level of competition can vary, okay? So for example, if we had a product that we listed on Etsy that has extremely high competition, it could be up here. Maybe it has lower competition, but it still has high competition. It could be over here. Now, of course, there's never going to be a negative competition, right? And usually anything below the x-axis, and this is an x-axis, is negative. Let's just not assume negativity here. Let's just assume neutral integers, not negative or positive. Let's just keep them, not negative, just positive, okay? So everything here is high competition at this point. Everything down here, right, is low competition. Is that fair to say? All right, if this is a chart representing competition and the division is the demand, we have low competition and high competition. Make sense? Let's go ahead and switch this around now. Everything on the right-hand side of this chart, okay, is high demand. Okay, high demand, meaning there's going to be more search demand, right, for that product, the amount of search demand. So if a listing, right, or a keyword or a product idea gets, let's say, 10,000 searches a month on Etsy, that would be a little bit on the higher demand side. But also, it depends on the number of factors. We'll get into that in just a second. But let's just say it's 10,000 demand, search demand. That is higher than something with 2,000 search demand, or 1,000, or 0, or whatever the case may be. Low search demand, right, is on this side, right? So low search demand is divided by competition. I want you to understand, this is kind of the point that I'm about to drive home, and I'm trying to get to the point of why I'm saying all this, is that the division between something that can be low demand, right, and high demand, right, the difference between the two can be the level of competition. Okay, I know that's counterintuitive, but that's exactly why I made this chart, and I'll explain in just a second. If we have a design, let's just say, or a product or a listing, I keep saying design, but really it's a product. It doesn't have to be a design. You guys can go watch my 5 different product idea videos for Etsy. I'll be the link in the description. If you watch that video, right, a product can fit in multiple categories at one point in time. And I'll explain. If the product has low demand, right, but there's a whole lot of competitors, it will fit here, okay? And what we can call this is we can call this the S category, okay? This is the S category. And part of the reason why I want to call this the S category, because this category sucks. This is the worst category to be in. You do not want to be in this category with a product. And most people who are in this category will never get sales. And it just so happens on Etsy that majority of the people who are beginners on Etsy, and I had to learn this because I went through this, is that they start exactly right here. They watch a YouTube video about how to upload products to Etsy, and the first recommendation they get is creating a Printful account, like I said, that example. creating a Printful account, slapping a design on Printful from Canva, basic design, and then connecting their Printful account to Etsy and waiting for the product to sell. The reality is that there's hundreds of thousands of people who have done the exact same thing as that individual, and they're all going to end up in this category: low demand, high competition. Now, once again, I'm going to break truly down what low and high competition really means in just a second, because there's going to be things that kind of like break the laws here in just a minute. And that's what I want you to stay for, and I'll explain them in just a minute. But let's just categorize these. After this section, right, we have this section, which is high demand, high competition. Now, this section is a little bit better, and I'm going to write S2 here because this sucks a little bit less, okay? This sucks the most. That's why I'm just going to put S1 here, okay? This sucks a little bit less, all right? Why? It's already high competition. You're really not helping yourself with the competition, but at least the demand is higher, which could potentially yield some traffic. And of course, if you get some traffic, you could potentially even get some sales. But of course, we have to work out the permutations. We have to expand on the numbers. The chance of getting a lot of traffic is unlikely here, and the chance of getting more traffic is more likely. Now, something that I will say is, of course, there are things that break the laws. I'll give you one example of things that can potentially break the laws: is paying for advertising, using social media. Those are examples that break the laws, but we're talking about very basic Etsy here. So I'm not going to get too complicated just yet into talking about advertising, talking about store sales. I'm not going to talk about those things just yet, okay? Let's go ahead and move on to our next category, which is right here. We have A. I'm going to write A1 here. And the reason why I'm going to write A1, or actually let's write E1. I was going to say A1 like the steak sauce, but A1, this one is the best category to be in. High demand, low competition. Now, before we even start to confuse ourselves, the type of high demand in this category is not the same kind of high demand in this category or even in this category, because by definition, the laws that split demand is the competition itself. And I'll explain. If there's a product that is competing in Etsy amongst 10,000 other products, but the search demand is 700,000 a month, that technically could fit in this section where there could be high demand but very low competition. Now, the reality is that doesn't exist on Etsy. That doesn't exist, at least not anymore. Maybe it existed in the beginning of Etsy's time, but not any longer, okay? And it never will for the future. And the reason why that is because, well, it's going to be 2024 and beyond. There's too many people on the platform to really cross over a unforeseen future, an unforeseen land on Etsy. I'll give you an example. T-shirts. Those are products that get the most demand, right, on Etsy. Hoodies. A lot of different examples, right, where people already created these products. At one point in time, the search demand, was lower, right? Or the competition was lower, but the demand was higher, right? Now, what happens is that we can move on to this section here, and I would call this E2 because this is the secondary most favorable, okay, which is low competition, low demand. Now, once again, guys, the type of competition here is not the same as the type of competition here. Okay, because demand does change things in terms of competition. You might say, what are you talking about? I'll explain. But before I explain in just a second, this S1, S2, these are the two worst to be in. Okay, I would not recommend being here. This, right, is very, very good. This is the best section you could be in. High demand, low competition. That's ideally the best, right? Low demand, low competition is the second best, right? High demand, high competition is the third best, and the absolute worst is low demand, high competition, okay? Now, before you create a product, ask yourself, is my product high demand? Is my niche high demand? Are the tags that I'm using high demand tags? There are ways to figure this out with SEO, keyword research, things like this. We'll talk about that in the next few videos coming up. That's why I highly recommend you subscribe, but that's something you want to ask yourself. In terms of creating your products, you also want to ask yourself, how much competition is there? Take a look at the title that you're using. Take a look at the tags that you're using. And by God, if you're advertising, take a look at the keywords you're advertising with when you actually run ads for Etsy. Aside from the actual ads that Etsy runs for you, right? If people are running Facebook ads, which I've seen it happen many, many times, people run Facebook ads for their Etsy stores, which to be honest is not my recommendation. There's a lot of cheaper strategies out there, but if you're going to do that, at least look at some of the things you're targeting, some of the interests, some of the demographics you're targeting before you do that. Now, I'll just say most of the people who do advertise on Facebook to their Etsy store are making mistakes. I'll just be honest. I see the ads all the time, but that will be for a different video for a different time. So let's go ahead and increase the lesson or continue the lesson. By definition, this is what I really wanted to get to. By definition, the degree to how competitive, right, or how high competition is automatically decreases demand. I'll explain what I mean, or increases demand. I'll explain. So this kind of works with supply and demand. I know that kind of didn't make sense for a second, but let me explain. The degree to how competitive something is, okay, can change competition invariably without even touching demand. I'll explain. Okay? If I am a creator and I have, let's just say, a t-shirt that I'm uploading to Etsy, we all know that that's extremely high competition. Let's just say from a numerical standpoint that demand is very high as well, right? High competition, high demand. By default, if competition is so high, even if demand is high, it still creates an environment for me that is less favorable and therefore highly competitive, basically. Okay? Now you might say that's obvious. Well, let me explain. If something is extremely low competition, right? Invariably as well, it is numerically also by nature low demand. Any kind of niche that you're going to find on Etsy that has a low amount of competition will be lower in demand than that of high competition niches. I want to repeat that again because this might go over your head. Any kind of niche that has low competition, right? Any kind of niche that fits down here, low competition, invariably has lower demand than any high competition niche. That's what I want you to understand. This is not basic ideology. That we're stepping past that here. The reason why this matters is because you can't expect a product that has, let's say, 30 competitors to get a search volume of 30,000 searches. Does that make sense? The reason why this has to make sense is because you do not want to create false expectations, which is completely the reason why people end up quitting doing things like print on demand, doing Etsy, creating products on Etsy, maybe starting their own business, is because they have false expectations. When you go out there and you see an Etsy video of, here's how I made $2 million in 1 year on Etsy, those are videos that don't give you the full story. They don't give you the full picture. And the reason why I want you to understand that is I want you guys to understand the point of view as to how I actually make money on these platforms is I never, and I've said this a million times in all my other videos, but I never look at a product and I expect that one product to solve me all my problems. This is probably one of the biggest red pills for people who are getting into this space, whether it be Etsy, whether it be print on demand, whether it be building their own website, whatever it is that, yes, you can get lucky and have very profitable products being created, but you should never walk into creating the product or walk into that business believing that that product, that one product, will solve you all your problems. Part of the reason why I say that is because I want you to settle for products with lower competition, lower demand, and that's perfectly fine. This is the second best place to be. It's very hard to be in this place because this is what we called a golden opportunity. It's very, very rare that you find golden opportunities anymore in any niche, and that's on any site. That's not even on just in general. Even if we're talking about Google SEO, it's very, very, very hard to be in this position, right? It takes really a lot of niche interest, and you have to be knowledgeable about a very, very deep niche kind of that you know about that a lot of people don't really know about, right? For you to figure something out like this. I'm not saying it's impossible. I have a few things under my belt, or a few products, a few listings that I'm in this category. But once again, I've been in the game for a while. But if you're the type of person who's coming into this Etsy game, any kind of business online, the best place to be is right here. Low demand, low competition, or excuse me, it's the second best place. And this place is almost as impossible to get to, so it's better to be here. Now, if you are fortunate enough to find a golden opportunity, which is high demand, low competition, then that's great. Utilize it. But I'm just saying the second best place, which is very close to the first best place, is right here. And once again, do not create false expectations. Do not expect one product to solve all your financial problems. Trust me. Part of the thing that makes you successful on platforms like Etsy and all these things is longevity. And longevity comes from your intuition. It also comes from the way you view things. And if you think and you believe that you're going to make $10,000 off a product a month, it's possible, but it's really unlikely. And once again, there's a lot of false expectations created on YouTube, created on different videos, created by different teachers, and they're showing you different things. And my goal is not to do that. I'll give you an example. I have digital products on Etsy that might make $300 a month, but I have over 70 of them. So we're sitting in a category or situation that are making me passive income, and it's not something that's too difficult to do or too difficult to find. So this is the best situation to be in after that golden opportunity. In fact, I figure this is almost like finding a I'll give you guys a hunting example. In the world of hunting, you have deer, right? Finding an albino deer is extremely rare. Like when you go hunt, extremely rare. People go hunting their whole lifetime, they might never see one. Okay? The second best opportunity is just finding a deer when you go hunting. So that's an example as to what I'm trying to say. And the antithesis of what I just said here is true, and I already went over this, but if competition is so low, right? If competition is so low, regardless of the niche, by default, demand, right, will be higher. And I've already said this. If competition is so high by default, then demand will be lower, right? Because competition gets in the way of your demand. If you're one product amongst 50,000, 100,000, 200,000, well, demand to you could almost be non-existent because of the amount of competition there is. That's what I want you to understand. So by default, niches that are lower in competition will have lower demand, and niches that have higher competition will by default have a higher demand as well. But for you, it could result in low demand. Okay, that's important to understand, because if you're going to run into a situation where you're creating a product in a very high competitive industry, the demand might be high, but you might not be able to stand amongst the crowd, except for one thing. And I wanted to actually mention this, is that there are things that make you win on Etsy that could be saving graces. And we really call that breaking the wheel. And I'll explain what that means in just a second. I have a whole slide here. Can you break the wheel? I'll explain that in just a second, and you'll kind of understand what I'm talking about in just a minute. But in the world of Etsy, the good thing is you have so many things working for you kind of in your lane. And I'll explain. When you're creating a product listing on Etsy, you have demand, you have competition. Part of competition is the number of competitive listings, right? Or the quality of the listings, right? So I'll explain what I mean. If you're in one of these situations, let's go ahead and scroll up here, and you're in one of these situations where you're in low demand, low competition. Let me break down what that looks like. Let's say the niche, the keyword, whatever you want to call it, is getting 300 search volume a month, and there's 34 competitors. In your case, you're in this section. It's definitely not high demand by any stretch of the imagination, but you definitely found a niche that's lower demand, but also extremely low competition. You can make sure that you get sales, but you can do things that can help you. And the number of competitive listings can control competition. The quality on those listings can also control competition, and I'll explain what I mean. If 15 out of those 32 listings or 30 listings are horrendous, nobody wants anything to do with them, no customer ever wants to buy them, well, then those 15 are already negated. So the truth is, the numbers aren't 30 to 300, but now it's 15 to 300. So part of understanding success on Etsy is just understanding that humans have features of desirability. Everybody knows what they want and what essentially what they're looking for. And I'll give you a quick example. I sell duvet covers. I have a website that sells duvet covers. Everybody has their own interest. And we have on this website we do SEO, right? So essentially, people are searching things on Google, coming to our site, seeing thousands of products, and selecting products and purchasing. And every single day, people make their own decisions on what products they want to buy. And they could be very, very specific. And although the products may be somewhat similar in the similar niches, right, they completely different in their purchases. So I'll give you an example. We have a niche on our duvet covers that are wolves. We have a bunch of these cool pictures of wolves, AI-generated pictures, sometimes even like snapshots, like photographs of these wolves on our duvet covers, okay? And there are people that buy different listings, different, products each and every day, and we're not necessarily promoting those specific listings on any social media. We're just using SEO, search engine optimization. And we look at the end of the day and we could see that, okay, 2 days ago, the other duvet cover was purchased, and then 2 days ago, this duvet cover was purchased. Completely two different images, but in the exact same niche. What I'm trying to say is that humans have an inkling to desirability. They have a choice as to what they like, a preference. And a lot of the times, if you can understand what the customer is looking for, then you can understand how to control quality. And this is perfect in any kind of niche, because if you know, okay, the customer is looking for this kind of design with this kind of sizing, with this kind of pixels or colors or whatever the product is on Etsy, you could sell pretty much anything on Etsy. Whatever that customer is looking for, you know that it is, and you look at the competition, now you have a leg up on the competition because you can control quality. Quality is definitely controllable. And when I say quality, what I really mean is individuality. I don't really mean quality, because somebody could have a product that is, in terms of quality, just as qualitative as yours. That doesn't mean it's going to succeed as much, because it all depends on what that customer is looking for. So if I'm looking for example, a Ukrainian flag shirt, and in my head I picture an all-over print type shirt, and all I see is these Ukrainian flags pasted on regular shirt in a box style, like the 4500 by 5400 pixel kind of style, like the Merch by Amazon style, I might not buy those, and there might be thousands of them on Etsy. And that's what can control competition. This is why I say, can we break the wheel? The answer is absolutely we can break the wheel. There are certain things we can do to our listings that can give us the advantage in the competition area. And that's one of the things, is that these these two things, or two segments, number of competitors and the quality or the individuality of that listing, controls competition. Competition is definitely, changeable. And just because there's a number on the screen where you have 50 or 100 other competitors doesn't necessarily mean that those competitors are true competitors. There could be other products that you can add to the competitive field that can erase the competition simply because you know what they're looking for. And I can't tell you how many times I've created products that there were people who were looking for specific products that found mine and purchased mine, even though I didn't have reviews on the product or whatever the case may be, never got any sales, wasn't favored in the algorithm, but mine was purchased because it offered exactly what that customer specifically was looking for. Okay? So next thing is, the next data set is demand, obviously. And there are things that control demand. One example is niche fit. Niche fit is a perfect example, because if you have the right tags in your product and the product doesn't match exactly with what the tags offer, you're probably not going to get a sale, and that hurts your success long term. And remember that the way Etsy works is that when you create a listing first in Etsy, for the most part, it's neutral. And when I say neutral, is that it's not favored by the algorithm, but it's not penalized either. And this is not just my opinion. Etsy has come out and said this information. I'm just saying it in different words. And what happens is every single time Etsy sends signals to your listing, they're looking for positive feedback, whether it be a click, a view, an interest, an impression. They're looking for positive feedback. It could be a favorite, whatever it is. The more positive feedback it receives, the more it indicates that it's a proper niche fit. And of course, there's no greater snowball effect on Etsy than on any other platform. Etsy has the greatest by far, and you can notice that by far because your design or your listing, or I keep saying design, but your product listing, whatever it is on Etsy, if it starts to get those favorites, it's like one favorite after the other, after the other, after the other, after the other. Once you get to that first sale, it's more after the other. It just goes faster and faster and faster. All it takes is that first or that second one to really kick in, and next thing you know, the snowball's rolling. Right? So those are some things I wanted to kind of address. Now, once again, can we break the wheel? The answer is yes, and I already explained. So really what I explained was, and I'm not going to give you the word right now, I'm going to quiz you on it because I already kind of explained it. I'm going to give you examples of niches or industries that already break the wheel, okay? Pharmaceuticals, monopolies, okay? Not necessarily on Etsy, but just in the world. Pharmaceutical industries, monopolies, art and collectibles, and luxury. What do they all have in common? How do all of these, I guess you could say industries, whatever you want to call them, how do they break the wheel? How do they break the wheel of normal supply and demand? Tell me. I'm quizzing you guys. How can they break the wheel? There's really one answer. And we kind of alluded to this in the video. I haven't come out and said it, but I've alluded to it. And I'm going to give you guys a second. You could pause the video if you really want to, but I'll ask the question a different way. The pharmaceutical industry, the monopoly industry, right? When I say the monopoly industry, meaning like, for example, Facebook, I wouldn't say Facebook. I would say more of, actually social media is all monopoly, but let's use, for example, Amazon. Amazon is pretty much a monopoly. I mean, they're up there, okay? Monopoly. What is it that they have? Art and collectibles. What is it in there are certain niches, there's certain sellers, luxury companies like Gucci, Louis Vuitton. What is it about these businesses all have in common? These industries, these businesses, these companies, these things that come to mind. What do they all have in common that we've already discussed that typically does not necessarily allow it to adhere to the normal chart that we've explained earlier? This chart of the competition, low competition. Why do those things don't fit in any of these categories? Why do they break the wheel, quote unquote? Why is that? Can you guys think of the answer? I'll tell you. The answer is it completely comes down to competitive advantage, right? When I come down and I create, for example, a luxury brand and it actually succeeds, like Gucci, like Louis Vuitton, doesn't matter what product, what I price the product. It doesn't matter who's my competitor. It doesn't matter if Walmart's selling $5 t-shirts. I could still sell my t-shirt for $350. It's not a problem. It doesn't matter if there's other artists out there in the world. I can create a painting. I could still sell it for $1 million. Do you see what I'm saying here? It breaks the wheel because it harps on the things that we spoke about earlier, the adaptable data sets, things that you can manipulate and things that you could change. Another one of those things that are uncontrollable is the amount of demand. Let's look at pharmaceuticals, for example. Pharmaceuticals, it doesn't matter if supply goes up or if demand goes up, if it doesn't matter if supply goes up or down, pharmaceuticals are always going to be needed. They're always going to be demand regardless of supply. That's why they don't fit in the typical kind of quadrant setup that we set up here. And remember, when supplies go up, in this case, when listings or competition goes up, demand will naturally go down respective to your listing because there's more competition, right? So, for example, if there's 300 search demand a month, and in month 1 there's 30 competition, but in month 2 there's 200 competition, that 300 search demand doesn't change. If it doesn't change, that listing, whatever listing you are, is going to generate less traffic and thereby less money. Does that make sense? So if you can understand this normal kind of economics 101 kind of lesson on Etsy, right? How Etsy really works, then you can make as much money as you want. It's just a matter of going out there and creating. And of course, you're going to use every single feature to your advantage to quote unquote break the wheel. All these things that we talk about with social media, we talk about with advertising, blogging, all these things are things that can potentially help you break the wheel, rank up in the algorithm faster, and accumulate more of the traffic. Another one of those things that quote unquote break the wheel is the placing in the algorithm. If you're on the 7th page and nobody finds you, it's much different than you're on the first page. So you can ask yourself, how can I get to the first page? Well, one answer, like I said, is finding lower competition niches. Might have lower demand, but so what? It's lower competition, right? That could be one thing. Another thing could be paying for ads to get the sales to eventually start ranking up. That could be one thing as well, right? It just comes from being in a position of knowing what action you're going to take. But now that you actually know how the game works, now you can know what action to take by default. All right, guys? So hopefully this video was informative. I know it might have been a little bit complicated, but hopefully you guys enjoyed. I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll post more Etsy videos soon. See you soon. Bye.